Here in Seattle, there's a little park hidden away at the edges of Queen Anne. There's a lookout at the top with one of the best views of the city. To get back down, there's a paved switchback path that winds gently down the hillside. It's thoughtful, well designed, people use it. But I've never taken it all the way before. If you look to your left, you'll notice something. You'll see a thin dirt path going directly down the hill where thousands of people decided that this would be an easier way. In a lot of ways, it's worse. It's steeper. It's more dangerous. You'll get dirt on you. But the worst path just keeps on winning. A programmer named Dick Gabriel noticed that the same thing was happening in the field of computer science back in 1989. He called it worse is better and then spent the next 30 years arguing with himself about it. And that's why, and I do mean this literally, C++ won because of New Jersey. This is the world's most famous third-rate computer scientist. And no, I'm not calling him that myself. This is how Dr. Gabriel chooses to describe himself. And yes, that is his real LinkedIn picture. I really like it. That's a mood right there. Respect. Anyway, Gabriel was a Lisp guy, but like really a Lisp guy. Gabriel worked on the Common Lisp standard, and he based his entire company on creating Lisp IDEs for Sun hardware. So he spent the majority of his career betting on the fact that Lisp would eventually win in the end, but then watching it not win. And in the middle of all this, he sat down and wrote a talk. Buried inside of that paper is a small section that's called Worse is Better. And he didn't even think that was the main point of the paper, and he didn't even really try to get the paper published. The only reason that the paper ended up resurfacing is because one of his employees at Lucid ended up finding the paper inside of his files and started sharing it around. And fun fact, that employee went on to be one of the creators of Netscape. Pretty flowers. This paper quickly became kind of the golden standard in software engineering for, quote unquote, why the right thing keeps on losing. And this is a point that has been argued for 35 years and counting, including by the creator himself on 2 different sides. What's crazy is that just a few months later, Gabriel actually wrote another paper under a fake pseudonym that was a complete rebuttal to his original point. Bourbaki, I think I'm saying that right, computer scientist, author of Worse is Better is Worse. Seems a little familiar, huh? But what's crazy is that after that, he ended up writing a 3rd essay comparing which of the 2 past Gabriels had actually been right. And he named this Is Worse Really Better? And he never decided. I'd like to join the debate that's been going on longer than I've been alive, but honestly at this point, even I'm not really sure what the right answer is. And it just became such a thing with Gabriel that even his own employees started to get, and I quote, seriously concerned that he might have a mental disease. The problem really came down to the difference in software philosophies between the 2 coasts of the United States. So that's right, it's an East Coast versus West Coast type of thing, and weirdly enough, a battle between MIT and New Jersey. There are 2 philosophies for writing software in the United States, and these 2 philosophies are just completely incompatible with each other, and they can't even agree on the definition of what good actually is. So on one hand, you have the MIT style, and this is the style that Gabriel called the quote-unquote right thing. It's really simple. Just design the perfect program. Make the interface easy to use and simple to call, no matter how complicated the underlying implementation actually is. And above all, every single time, no matter how long it takes, make it correct. Just 200 miles apart in another building over in New Jersey, we have Bell Labs, and they had a flurry of activity around Unix. Now, the Unix philosophy was keep the implementation simple. It doesn't matter if the interface is ugly, because the user's basically just gonna have to deal with it. And as for correctness, well, correctness can come later. The important part is just get it out. Now, I'm not making this up, but Gabriel used to say, and I quote, well, what do you expect from an operating system designed and implemented in New Jersey? Crazy. And over the years, this kind of morphed into this East Coast versus West Coast philosophy. Berkeley ended up choosing the New Jersey style of software engineering, and that, combined with the kind of ship-it-fast culture of Silicon Valley, ended up making the West more culturally New Jersey, while the East Coast ended up veering more towards an academic form of software engineering. As much as he hated it, Gabriel argued that New Jersey style was better. Not the software he thought was trash, but trash spreads faster. According to him, it's better to get half of the right thing available so that it spreads like a virus. That's exactly what Unix did. And, just as importantly, that's exactly what C did. It was easy to port and could run on garbage hardware. And Gabriel said that those two were the ultimate computer viruses. And keep in mind, he's saying all of this while he's betting his entire company on the MIT philosophy. So why does the worst thing always win? Why does everybody end up taking the crummy dirt path instead of the nice, smooth, paved switchbacks? Well, there's one specific technical decision, and it's one of the cleanest parts in the entire essay. It takes the entire East Coast versus West Coast debate and summarizes it into one single dilemma. Programmers call it the PC losering problem. And no, PC doesn't mean personal computer in this context, it means program counter. Imagine it's the 1980s and you write a program and you're waiting for some data, maybe from the network or something. But wait, something happened. Holy guacamole, the user accidentally resized their terminal. Interrupt, sigwinch. I'm actually not joking, by the way, because if you were using graphical Unix back in the 80s, then window resizing could actually mess you up, because the processor has to just completely drop whatever it's doing to be able to handle the new incoming notification. In the lovely MIT way, the OS just handles all of this for you. It saves the state of the program counter, does what it needs to do, then resumes your program, and nobody's the wiser. Meanwhile, in the second approach, if you're working on Unix-based systems, you're absolutely screwed. Over in New Jersey, Bell Labs was like, backing up the program counter would make the OS like really complicated, so I think we're gonna let the programmers deal with that one. So then you would get thrown this error code like enter, and the OS would just be like, I have no idea what to do, you need to deal with this one. This is a book on coffee, by the way. I don't think we're gonna find our enter signals in here. Espresso signals. And if you think this is just some ancient 1980s history, it's not. The ghost of New Jersey is still with us everywhere we go today. For example, if you take a look at the Git source code, then you'll see all of these enter handlers all over the place. Let's say, for example, you do a git clone, and then in the middle of that you decide to resize your terminal window. Whoop whoop. We still have this exact same problem in 2026. Isn't it kind of crazy to just think if I just go like this? On the back end, your system is completely freaking out right now. It's like, ah! So you might be thinking like, maybe the MIT philosophy has a few points to it. But none of that mattered, because the entire point of Gabriel's essay is essentially the best way to guarantee your software's failure is to make it 100% correct. Which brings us to the ultimate contagion, C++. Now just to be clear, I love C++. So much so that I'm actually giving a talk coming up soon in the UK talking about some runtime reflection techniques for C++. But it's also really clear that a lot of people really hate C++, and both the success of the language and that hatred of the language come from the same thing, and this is what Dr. Gabriel calls New Jersey. Turns out Bjarne Stroustrup is a pretty smart guy, and fun fact, I've actually met him in person before. But the question you have to ask yourself is, do you want to be correct, or do you want to win? Now, object-oriented languages were this hot new concept. For his PhD, Bjarne worked with a language called Simula, and Simula was the first object-oriented language ever created. It was clean, elegant, beautiful, also unusably slow, so nobody really used it like outside of academia. And remember, Bjarne was literally at Bell Labs in New Jersey, and so he was given a crazy, open-ended task. Do something interesting and give us a presentation in a year. What would I do with that task? I don't know what I would do. It's interesting to think about. I think I would come up with, you know those pianos that are like on the ground that you like move your feet on? I do that, but it's a keyboard, so you can program, but you also can get exercise at the same time. It's just like, it's just like really slow. You're like, if bracket else done. There's a world-changing decision right here, because he could either take Simula, redesign it from scratch, and create a new, beautiful language that runs on modern hardware, or he could take fast, ugly C and basically bolt on object orientation on top of it, and try to maintain as much backwards compatibility as possible. In his own book, Bjarne wrote that the cleaner language he could have built would have been an unimportant cult language, and he decided that the only way to get a really large amount of existing C programmers to try out a new object-oriented language would be to allow them to compile their existing C code directly in C++ unchanged. In fact, his first compiler, CFront, wasn't even a full compiler in the traditional sense. It didn't output machine code directly. What it did is it took C++ code and translated it over to C code so that existing C compilers could then handle the rest of it. But the absolute genius of this is that means that C++ could run wherever C could already run without any kind of porting, and C ran everywhere. What's funny is that Gabriel ends up kind of calling out this point inside of his essay, and he says, "Half the computers that exist at any point are worse than the median, smaller or slower. Unix and C work fine on them, which means Unix and C are easy to port. Which means that C++ is the ultimate virus." Meanwhile, 3,000 miles away in California, Gabriel's working on the committee for object orientation in Lisp, and almost nobody ends up using it. Now, Gabriel understood the hardware problem really well, because if you remember with his company Lucid, his job was basically to take Lisp and make it run on cheap Sun workstations rather than, $70,000 Lisp machines. But it wasn't enough. Even cheap Lisp was too much of an ask for everybody so far entrenched inside of the C mindset. And in the craziest twist of fate ever, his company Lucid actually ended up writing an IDE for C++ called Energize, just to keep the lights on. You've got the man writing the essay on why the worst thing always wins, working at a company now that is shipping out the worst thing just to stay afloat. And this is all because of some decision that another guy made at a lab in New Jersey. So yeah. C++ won because of New Jersey. If you asked Gabriel what his official stance is right now in 2026, I'm actually not really certain what he would say, because he never really officially decided on his previous stances. You've got his second essay written under a fake name, his third essay arguing the previous two essays that he created, and then a fourth essay came out in 2000 where he decided that maybe the quote-unquote right thing was the correct decision all along. I also highly encourage you to read his papers on dreamsongs.com, and he's also a highly accomplished poet and writer as well. For what it's worth, Bjarne has said before that there are two kinds of programming languages in the world. The ones that people complain about, and the ones that nobody uses, which is kind of like the entirety of Gabriel's essays summed up by the man who ended up winning. And it is kind of a tricky problem. If I think back about that dirt path that I cut through on my way home, I'm not sure who's winning either. If you like this kind of content, don't forget to subscribe, and think about it. Whose side are you on? Do you believe that the worst option is the better option, or do you think that the right option is the best decision? Thanks so much for watching, everyone. Lori Wired out.